Hey everyone, Sophia here. Welcome to Revenge Shift, where the best stories come to life. Hit subscribe for your daily dose. The laptop was open on the kitchen counter when I came home from work on Tuesday. Not unusual in itself. Michael often left his work laptop open, charging while he showered or made coffee. What was unusual was the voice memo application still running. A file paused mid-playback, the timestamp showing it was 23 minutes long. I'd only meant to close the laptop. To save battery, to be helpful, the way I'd been helpful for the entire 9 years of our marriage. My hand was already on the screen when I saw her name in the file title. Rachel, Future Plans, May 14th. Rachel Morrison, Michael's colleague. The senior product manager he'd been working closely with for the past year on the new software launch. The woman who called at 8 p.m. on Sundays and laughed at inside jokes I didn't understand. The woman whose name came up so often in conversation that I started to notice its absence when Michael carefully didn't mention her. I should have closed the laptop. Should have walked away, given him privacy, trusted him the way I'd always trusted him. Instead, I pressed play. Her voice came through the speakers, warm and confident. The slight Boston accent she'd mentioned once at a company holiday party. I keep thinking about what you said last night. About timing. Michael's voice, lower, intimate in a way that made something twist in my stomach. The timing has to be right. I can't just blow up my marriage without a plan. I know, I'm not pushing. But Michael, we've been doing this dance for 14 months now. Meeting in hotels, sneaking around like teenagers. I want more than stolen afternoons. 14 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. 14 months while I'd been planning our 10th anniversary trip. 14 months while I'd been supporting his career. Hosting his networking dinners, being the understanding wife when he worked late. I want that too, Michael said. But Hannah's not like your ex. She's not going to make this easy. She wants explanations, therapy, second chances. She's the type who believes in working through problems, because she's too trusting to see when a problem isn't fixable. Rachel's laugh, crystalline and cruel. She really has no idea, does she? About us? About any of it? None. She thinks you're just my work friend. She actually suggested I invite you and Marcus to dinner next month. She felt bad that we hadn't socialized more as couples. That's almost sweet. In a naive kind of way. Hannah's good at her job, but she's not strategic. She doesn't think in layers. She teaches grant writing at the community college, helps nonprofits with paperwork. It's meaningful work, but it's simple. She sees the world in straightforward terms. Good people, bad people, right choices, wrong choices. No nuance. My hand tightened on the edge of the counter. I taught advanced grant writing at 3 community colleges. Last year, my students had secured over $4 million in funding for local nonprofits. I'd been featured in Chronicle of Philanthropy for my curriculum design. But Michael described it like I helped people fill out forms. So what's the plan? Rachel asked. We can't do this forever. I'm working on it. I need to time it right. Make sure everything's in place financially, professionally. Hannah's name is on the house, the accounts, everything. We got married young before I understood how to protect assets. Your lawyer can handle that. Eventually. But I need leverage. Proof that the marriage was already failing. Documentation that I tried to save it. Otherwise, she gets half of everything I've built, and her income is minimal compared to mine. The courts favor the lower earner. How mercenary of you. But Rachel sounded pleased, admiring even. I'm being practical. Once she's out of the picture, once the divorce is finalized and settled, we can finally be together properly. Move in together, make it official. But we have to be smart about this. And you're sure she's too trusting to see this coming? Completely. Hannah believes the best in people. It's one of the things I loved about her initially, but it's also what makes her easy to manage. She doesn't ask complicated questions because she doesn't think in complicated terms. She accepts what I tell her at face value. Then we have time. We do. But Rachel? No more recordings. This conversation shouldn't exist in any recoverable format. We need to be more careful. You're right. I'll delete this after we hang up. Good, I love you. I love you too. And Michael? I'm looking forward to our future. The real one, not these stolen moments. Soon, I promise. The recording ended. The laptop screen glowed in the dimming kitchen light. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking. A car alarm going off 3 streets away. The ordinary sounds of a Tuesday evening in suburban Seattle. I stood very still. My heart was beating normally. My hands were steady. There was a curious detachment, as if I were watching this happen to someone else, observing from a distance. Michael and Rachel, 14 months. Planning to end our marriage after he secured his assets. Calling me trusting, simple, easy to manage. The shower was still running upstairs. Michael always took long showers after his gym sessions, one of many routines I'd learned in 9 years of marriage. I had maybe 10 more minutes before he came downstairs. I pulled out my phone and photographed the laptop screen, capturing the file name, the timestamp, the playback position. Then I opened Michael's email, something I'd never done before in our entire relationship. His password was saved in the browser. Morrison Tech 2019, the year his startup had been acquired. I'd been proud of him for that acquisition. We'd celebrated with champagne I'd picked out, at a restaurant I'd made reservations for. The email search for Rachel returned 463 results. I started scrolling, taking screenshots. Innocuous subject lines, Q3 projections, client meeting notes, product launch timeline. But the content was anything but professional. Can't stop thinking about Saturday. Your hotel room. The way I didn't read the full messages. Just captured them, methodically, quickly. Evidence was evidence. Details could be analyzed later. His calendar showed weekly meetings with Rachel, always scheduled in the late afternoon. Always labeled as product review or strategy session. Convenient that his strategy sessions always ran 3 hours long at the Marriott downtown. The shower stopped. I closed all the windows, returned the laptop to exactly how it had been. The voice recording paused at the same timestamp. I deleted my photo app as recently deleted folder after uploading everything to a cloud account Michael didn't know I had. An account I'd created years ago for my consulting work, storing client files and sensitive documents. By the time Michael came downstairs, toweling his hair, I was stirring pasta sauce on the stove. The kitchen smelled like garlic and basil. NPR played softly from the radio. Everything was perfectly normal. "Smells amazing," he said, kissing the top of my head. The casual affection of someone who thought his secrets were safe. "How was your day?" "Productive." I helped 3 students finalize their grant applications. One is for $200,000. "She's nervous about the final review." "That's great, babe." His voice had that distracted tone he used when he wasn't really listening. He opened the refrigerator, grabbed a beer. Rachel and I finally got approval for the Q4 product launch. 6 months of planning finally paying off. That must be a relief. Huge relief. We've been working so closely on this. It'll be weird when the project wraps and we're on different teams again. I set my fork down carefully, meeting his eyes. Will it be weird? Not working together as much? Something flickered across his face. Guilt, concern. It vanished too quickly to identify. Well, you spend that much time collaborating with someone, you build a rapport. But yeah, we'll both move on to new projects. Of course. I returned to my pasta, twirling linguine around my fork with deliberate precision. That makes sense. We ate dinner the way we'd eaten 1,000 dinners. Michael talked about work, about the politics of the product launch, about his concerns that the engineering team wasn't delivering on schedule. I made appropriate sounds of interest, asked relevant questions, played the role of supportive wife. I'd gotten very good at this role over 9 years. The attentive listener, the career cheerleader, the woman who managed the home so he could focus on building his professional success. I'd subordinated my consulting work, taken part-time teaching positions instead of full-time ones, been flexible and accommodating and understanding. Easy to manage, he'd said. Doesn't think in complicated terms. After dinner, Michael settled on the couch with his laptop. I cleaned the kitchen, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters. Normal routine. Normal evening. I kissed him goodnight at 10 p.m. when I went upstairs to read. He barely looked up from his screen. In our bedroom, though I was starting to think of it as just a room where I slept, I pulled up the cloud account on my tablet. All the screenshots were there, backed up, safe. I started reading through the emails properly, taking notes in a password-protected document. The affair had started 15 months ago at a product conference in Austin. Hotel room encounter, alcohol involved, mutual attraction that had been building for months. They'd been careful after that initial weekend, establishing patterns designed to avoid detection. Afternoon meetings explained as work sessions. Business trips coordinated so they overlapped. Late-night calls disguised as project emergencies. And woven through all of it, discussions about me. How I didn't understand Michael's work. How I was satisfied with my small teaching role. How I'd be devastated, but ultimately wouldn't fight back because I was too kind, too trusting, too simple. In one email, Rachel had written, "Does she know you make 6x her salary? Will that matter in the divorce?" Michael's response, "She doesn't think about money strategically. She's always been about fulfillment and meaning rather than compensation. It's one of the things that makes her easy to manage financially. She doesn't ask about my investments or my accounts. She's content with our household budget and her teaching income." I closed the tablet, lay back on the bed I'd carefully made that morning, and stared at the ceiling. They were right about some of it. I did care about meaningful work over maximum compensation. I had chosen teaching and nonprofit consulting because it aligned with my values. I didn't obsess over Michael's salary or his investment portfolio because I trusted him to handle those aspects of our finances fairly. But they were wrong about the strategic thinking. Grant writing was nothing but strategy. Understanding complex regulations, anticipating reviewer objections, crafting narratives that addressed multiple criteria simultaneously, building budgets that satisfied diverse stakeholder requirements. I wrote documents that competed against hundreds of other applications for limited funding. My success rate was over 70%. I thought in extremely complicated terms. I just thought about different things than Michael and Rachel did. The question was, what did I do with this information? I could confront Michael, demand explanations, suggest counseling, try to save the marriage. That's what he expected. What he was counting on. The trusting wife who'd fight to preserve the relationship, who'd make it difficult for him to leave, who'd be an obstacle to overcome. Or I could be strategic. On Wednesday morning, I went to work as usual. Taught my 9 a.m. class on nonprofit fiscal management. Met with students during office hours. Ate lunch in the faculty lounge with colleagues who were complaining about parking permits and curriculum changes. At 1 p.m. during my break between classes, I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Victoria Chen, and she'd been recommended by a colleague whose sister had gone through a complex high-asset divorce. Victoria's website emphasized strategic planning, asset protection, and aggressive representation. "Tell me what's happening," Victoria said when I was connected to her office. I laid it out concisely, the recording I'd found, the emails I'd documented, the 14-month affair, Michael's statements about protecting assets and timing the divorce strategically, his salary compared to mine, the house in both our names, the accounts, the investments. Victoria was quiet for a moment after I finished. "You have documentation of all of this?" Screenshots. The original recording is still on his laptop. I didn't delete anything or move any files. Smart. Very smart. And you haven't confronted him? No, I found it last night. I documented everything but said nothing. Good. Keep it that way for now. Here's what I need you to do. Get me copies of everything. Every email, every calendar entry, every financial document you can access. Bank statements, investment accounts, credit card bills, tax returns, his and yours. Can you do that without alerting him? Yes, he's given me access to most of it over the years. He handles the investments, but I'm on all the accounts. Excellent. How soon can you get me this information? By tonight. I work from home on Wednesday afternoons. Perfect. Once I review everything, we'll schedule a consultation. But preliminarily, based on what you've told me, you're in an excellent position. He documented his own strategic planning to minimize your settlement. That's going to work heavily in your favor. And the affair with a colleague creates additional leverage. How so? Rachel Morrison works at the same company, correct? Senior product manager? Yes, then there are professional implications. Many companies have ethics policies about relationships between employees, especially when they involve project resources, travel budgets, company time. If their affair has been conducted during work hours using company resources, that's a violation. And if either of them has been dishonest about their relationship on any official documents or disclosure forms, that's an additional problem. Something crystallized in my mind. Michael's company has a strict ethics policy. I remember from the acquisition documents. Employees are required to disclose personal relationships that could create conflicts of interest. Have they disclosed? I doubt it. Michael said specifically they need to be careful, that they're sneaking around. Then we have multiple angles of approach. The divorce itself, which you'll win handily with this evidence, and potential professional consequences for both of them. Hannah, how do you want to handle this? There's the legal settlement, and then there's the question of whether you want to pursue the professional angle. I thought about Michael's voice on that recording. Easy to manage. Doesn't think in complicated terms. I want everything. I want a fair settlement, and I want there to be professional consequences for what they've done. Understood. Get me that documentation today. Tomorrow we'll map out strategy, and Hannah, don't confront him yet. Don't change your behavior. Stay calm, stay normal, and keep documenting anything new you find. I can do that. After we hung up, I sat in my office, a tiny space I shared with two other adjunct professors, crammed with filing cabinets and outdated textbooks, and considered my next move. I had a 4 p.m. meeting scheduled, not with a student. With James Park, the chief ethics officer at Michael's company, Morrison Technologies. I'd contacted him that morning through the company's ethics hotline, requesting a confidential meeting regarding potential policy violations. The hotline operator had been professional but curious, had asked if this concerned harassment or discrimination. I'd said it concerned undisclosed conflicts of interest and misuse of company resources. Within 2 hours, James Park himself had called to schedule a meeting. Morrison Technologies took ethics seriously. It was part of their brand, part of how they'd built trust with investors and clients. The founder, Margaret Morrison, had been vocal about creating a company culture based on transparency and integrity. Every employee signed an extensive code of conduct. Violations were grounds for immediate termination. At 3:45 p.m., I drove to Morrison Technologies' downtown Seattle office. The building was glass and steel, aggressively modern, with a lobby full of awards and framed magazine articles about the company's culture and growth. James Park's office was on the 14th floor. He was 53, according to his LinkedIn profile, with experience in corporate governance and regulatory compliance. He stood when I entered, shaking my hand with a firm grip. "Mrs. Anderson, thank you for coming in. Please sit." His office had a view of Elliott Bay, gray water stretching toward the horizon. Everything about the space communicated professional seriousness. "Thank you for meeting with me," I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "You mentioned on the hotline that you had information about potential policy violations. Before we proceed, I need to clarify that anything you share with me will be investigated according to company protocols. If violations are confirmed, there will be consequences for the employees involved. Do you understand?" "I do. That's why I'm here." "All right then. Tell me what you've discovered." I pulled out my tablet, opened the folder I'd prepared. My husband, Michael Anderson, is a senior software architect at Morrison Technologies. He's been having an affair with Rachel Morrison, a senior product manager, for approximately 14 months. They've been conducting this relationship using company time, company resources, and company travel budgets. Neither has disclosed the relationship despite company policy requiring such disclosure. James's expression remained neutral, but I saw his attention sharpen. "That's a serious allegation. Do you have evidence?" I turned the tablet toward him, showing him the first email. Then the second. Then the calendar entries. Then transcripts I'd made of the voice recording, with timestamps. He read through everything methodically, his face growing progressively more grim. "This is substantial documentation. May I ask how you obtained it?" My husband left his work laptop open in our home. I found a voice recording he and Rachel had made discussing their relationship and their plans for the future. After discovering that, I looked through his email and calendar, which he accesses through our home computer. "And you're bringing this to me because ... Because they violated company policy. Because they've been using company resources for personal purposes. Because they've been dishonest about their relationship while working closely together on company projects. And because I believe other employees deserve to know that Morrison Technologies actually enforces its ethics policies. That rules apply equally regardless of position or performance." James set down the tablet. "Mrs. Anderson, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. However, I need to be transparent with you about something. Pursuing this will have significant consequences for your husband, potentially for his career beyond just this company. Are you prepared for that? He's prepared to divorce me as strategically as possible to protect his assets. He's called me simple and easy to manage. He's been lying to me for over a year. Yes, Mr. Park. I'm prepared for consequences. All right then. He pulled out a legal pad, began making notes. I'll need copies of everything you've shown me. I'll need to interview other employees who've worked with Michael and Rachel. And I'll need to review company records of their travel, their meeting room bookings, their project timelines. This investigation will take several days. How long before there are consequences? If the evidence supports your allegations and preliminarily it appears to, we'll present findings to the executive team within 48 hours. From there, decisions about disciplinary action will be made quickly. Morrison Technologies doesn't tolerate ethics violations. What kind of disciplinary action are we discussing? That will depend on the full scope of what we find. But for undisclosed conflicts of interest, for using company resources for personal purposes, for dishonesty on official disclosure forms, we're looking at potential termination for both employees. I thought about Michael's voice on that recording, discussing his carefully timed exit strategy from our marriage. About Rachel's laugh when she'd called me naive. About the 14 months of betrayal while I'd been supporting his career. Thank you, Mr. Park. That's all I needed to know. Wednesday night, Michael came home at 7:30 later than usual. He looked tired but pleased with himself, loosening his tie as he dropped his bag by the door. Long day? I asked from the kitchen where I was preparing salmon and roasted vegetables. Productive, though. Rachel and I finally got executive approval for the Q4 budget. We've been fighting for these resources for months. That must feel good. To work so well with someone. It does. We're a solid team. We think alike, anticipate each other's needs. It makes complex projects much easier. I plated the salmon, arranged the vegetables artistically, brought everything to the table. Michael opened the bottle of wine, poured 2 glasses. We sat across from each other the way we had thousands of times. Hannah, I've been thinking, he said, taking a sip of wine. About us, about our future. My heart rate stayed steady. My expression remained interested, open. Oh, we got married so young. 23, both of us. We're different people now than we were 9 years ago. Sometimes I wonder if we've grown in different directions. That's a natural thought. Marriage evolves. But what if it's evolved into something that doesn't work anymore? What if we want different things? I cut a piece of salmon, chewed slowly. What do you think you want that's different from what I want? I don't know exactly, just ... more. Something different. Does that make sense? Are you saying you want a divorce, Michael? He looked startled that I'd said it directly. I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking out loud. Exploring feelings. But if you were saying that, how would you want to handle it? Hypothetically? Sure, hypothetically. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. I'd want it to be amicable. Fair. We split things reasonably. Stay friends if possible. No drama, no fighting. Just 2 people who recognize they're better apart than together. And what would fair look like to you? 50-50 split of major assets. The house, we sell it and divide the proceeds. Bank accounts, same thing. My 401k and investment accounts are complicated, but we'd work something out. You'd be fine, Hannah. Your income is modest, but you're good at budgeting. You'd land on your feet. That's thoughtful of you. To have considered the details so carefully. I'm just thinking through scenarios. Making sure if we ever needed to have this conversation, I'd approach it responsibly. Of course. I finished my salmon. Though I imagine if we were actually getting divorced, there would be lawyers involved. Legal advice about what fair really means under Washington state law. Sure, but lawyers complicate things. Make them adversarial. I'd prefer we handle it ourselves like adults. That makes sense. As long as both adults have equal information and equal bargaining power. Something flickered across his face. What does that mean? Just that in any negotiation, both parties should understand what they're negotiating over. Full transparency about assets, about circumstances, about motivations. Otherwise, it's not really fair, is it? I suppose not. Anyway, I stood, began clearing plates. This is all hypothetical. We're not actually getting divorced. Unless there's something you're not telling me? No, of course not. Just theoretical discussion. Good, because I'd hate to think you'd been planning something like that without being honest with me about it. He helped me clean up, both of us moving through our established routines. Load the dishwasher, wipe the counters, put away leftovers. The choreography of long marriage, each person knowing their role. But I was thinking about Victoria Chun's advice, about James Park's investigation, about the 48 hours he'd mentioned. By Friday morning, everything would be different. I just had to stay calm until then. Thursday morning, I woke at 5:30 a.m. to find Michael already gone. A text on my phone explained, "Emergency product meeting, home late tonight. Love you." I lay in bed for a few minutes, staring at that casual "love you" at the end. Did he mean it? Did he think he meant it? Or was it just habit, the expected sign-off to a spouse you were planning to strategically divorce? At 6 a.m., I forwarded Victoria Chen a complete archive of financial documents. Every bank statement from the past 3 years. Tax returns, investment account summaries. Michael's employment contracts and stock options. The deed to our house. Credit card statements showing hotel charges and restaurant bills that correlated with Rachel's calendar. Victoria called me at 7:15. "Hannah, this is even better than I expected. He's been taking her on business trips, charging romantic dinners to his corporate card, using company resources extensively. And his investment accounts show he's been moving money around, setting up accounts in his name only. He's been preparing for this divorce for at least 6 months. Can we use that?" Absolutely. It demonstrates premeditation, financial manipulation, and bad faith. Plus, with your documentation of the affair and his statements about keeping you uninformed, we can argue for a much more favorable split than 50-50. I'm thinking 70-30 in your favor, plus spousal support for at least 5 years, possibly permanent depending on how the case develops. What about the house? You keep it or you sell it and take 70% of proceeds. His choice, but either way, you come out substantially ahead of what he was planning to give you. And his 401k. Half of the marital portion is yours by law. He can't hide that. Same with his stock options, his pension, any other benefits he's accrued during the marriage. Washington is a community property state. Everything earned during the marriage belongs equally to both spouses. He told me his accounts were complicated. They're not. He just hoped you wouldn't look into it. Hannah, you're going to be fine financially, better than fine. By the time we're done, you'll have substantial assets and the income to support yourself comfortably while you rebuild your career if you choose to. After the call, I dressed carefully. Not for my teaching job, which didn't start until afternoon. For the other meeting I had scheduled at 9 a.m., with Margaret Morrison herself. The founder and CEO of Morrison Technologies had agreed to see me after James Park had briefed her on the investigation. Her assistant had called yesterday afternoon, voice professionally neutral, requesting my presence for a meeting about company matters. I arrived at Morrison Technologies at 8:45. The receptionist directed me to the executive floor, where Margaret Morrison's office occupied the entire northwest corner of the building. Margaret was 61, silver hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She stood when I entered, extending her hand. "Mrs. Anderson, thank you for coming in. I'm Margaret Morrison. Thank you for seeing me. Please sit. Can I offer you coffee? Water?" Water would be lovely. She poured 2 glasses from a carafe on her desk, handed me one, then sat across from me in the conversation area rather than behind her desk. Power move or attempt at informality? Hard to tell. "James Park briefed me on your meeting yesterday," Margaret said. "He showed me the documentation you provided. I want to start by saying I'm sorry you're going through this situation. Discovering infidelity is painful under any circumstances. Thank you. I also want you to understand why I'm meeting with you personally. Morrison Technologies was built on principles of integrity and transparency. When employees violate our ethics policies, especially senior employees who should be modeling appropriate conduct, it reflects on everything we've built here. I take that seriously. I appreciate that." James has completed his preliminary investigation. He's interviewed several employees who've worked with Michael and Rachel. He's reviewed travel records, meeting room bookings, expense reports, and email communications. The evidence confirms everything you documented. They've been in a personal relationship for over 14 months. They failed to disclose it as required. And they've used company resources extensively for personal purposes. What happens now? Margaret's expression hardened. They're both being terminated, effective immediately. As of 9 a.m. this morning, they're no longer employees of Morrison Technologies. Both of them? Both of them. Ethics violations of this magnitude with this much documentation leave us no choice. Michael will be called into a meeting at 9. Rachel at 9:30. HR will be present, along with legal counsel. They'll be informed of the termination, given their final paychecks, and escorted from the building. Their access to company systems has already been revoked. I set down my water glass carefully. That's definitive. It has to be. If we make exceptions for senior employees, if we allow violations like this to slide, we undermine everything we claim to stand for. The other 643 employees at this company need to know that our policies matter, that we enforce them consistently. What about references? Future employment? We'll confirm dates of employment if contacted. Nothing more. We don't provide references for terminated employees. They're both talented professionals who made serious errors in judgment. How they rebuild their careers from here is up to them. Margaret, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you meeting with me personally? You could have had James handle all of this. She smiled slightly. Because James showed me the transcripts of that voice recording. The one where your husband described you as simple, trusting, unable to think in complicated terms. And then I saw how you documented everything. How you strategically brought this information to us, how you've coordinated with your attorney. You're obviously none of those things he described. No, I'm not. I looked into your background. Advanced degree in nonprofit management from University of Washington. Grant writing success rate over 70%. Featured speaker at 3 national conferences on strategic fundraising. That's not simple work. That's sophisticated, competitive, strategic work. Michael never really understood what I did. Then he's a fool. And he's about to find out exactly how strategic you are. Margaret stood, extending her hand again. Hannah, I wish you the best in your divorce proceedings. And if you're ever interested in corporate work, specifically in our corporate giving or community relations departments, I'd be happy to have HR reach out to you. We could use someone with your skills. Thank you. I'll keep that in mind. As I left her office, I checked my phone. 8:57 a.m. In 3 minutes, Michael would be called into a meeting. In 33 minutes, Rachel would follow. By 10 a.m., both their careers at Morrison Technologies would be over. I drove to a coffee shop near campus, ordered a latte, and sat by the window watching morning traffic. My phone rang at 9:42. Michael. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 9:45. Again at 9:49. Again at 9:53. By 10:15, I had 12 missed calls and 6 text messages. What the fuck did you do? They fired me. You did this. Call me immediately. Hannah, we need to talk now. You destroyed my career. How could you? Rachel's fired too. They know everything. Did you do this? I sipped my latte slowly, savoring the rich espresso, the perfectly steamed milk. Then I composed a single text message. All communication should go through our attorneys. Victoria Chen represents me. Please have your lawyer contact her office. I pressed send and blocked his number. The next few days moved with dreamlike speed. Victoria filed for divorce on Thursday afternoon, requesting an emergency hearing for temporary orders. Michael was served with papers at his brother's house, where he'd apparently gone after being fired. Friday morning, I met with Victoria and her paralegal to review the settlement demands. 70% of all marital assets. The house in my name. Spousal support of $4,000 monthly for 7 years. Half his 401k. 30% of his stock options. He'll fight this, Victoria said. He'll say it's punitive, that you're being vindictive. Let him fight. We have documentation of everything. We do. And Hannah? I heard about what happened at Morrison Technologies. Both of them fired. That was brilliant. They violated company policy. I simply made sure the company knew about it. Still, most people in your position wouldn't have thought to approach the company directly. They would have focused solely on the divorce. You played this strategically. I'm good at strategy. Michael just never noticed. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Michael Dess attorney, a divorce lawyer he'd apparently hired in panic on Friday, of TERNOON, filed a response arguing that the settlement demands were excessive and punitive. My client is willing to offer a fair 50-50 split of assets and reasonable spousal support, his attorney wrote. Mrs. Anderson's demands appear motivated by anger rather than equity. Victoria's response was devastating. She attached the voice recording transcripts, the emails discussing asset protection and strategic divorce timing, the documentation of Michael's separate accounts and financial manipulation. She included character references from my colleagues attesting to my professional accomplishments and strategic thinking abilities. Mr. Anderson has been planning this divorce for at least 6 months, Victoria wrote. He has characterized his wife as simple and easy to manage while systematically preparing to minimize her settlement. His current complaints about her demands being excessive ring hollow when compared to his documented plans to manipulate her into accepting less than her legal entitlement. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Michael sat across the courtroom looking diminished, his lawyer beside him presenting arguments about fairness and reasonableness. Victoria methodically walked the judge through everything. The affair, the professional misconduct, the voice recording, the financial manipulation. Michael's own words about keeping me uninformed and timing things strategically. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, read through the documents with increasing disapproval. "Mr. Anderson," she said finally, "I've reviewed Mrs. Chun's submissions. I've read the transcripts of your conversation with Ms. Morrison. I've seen the emails discussing asset protection and strategic timing. And I've then reviewed the financial documentation showing you've been creating separate accounts and moving money without your wife's knowledge." Michael's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client's private conversations with a colleague don't." "Sit down!" "Counselor," the judge's voice was sharp. "Your client's private conversations reveal his intent to manipulate these proceedings, to minimize his wife's settlement by keeping her uninformed about marital assets, and to characterize her as too simple to understand her legal rights. That's not going to fly in my courtroom." She turned to me. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm granting your request for temporary orders. The house remains in your possession. Mr. Anderson will pay temporary spousal support of $4,000 monthly beginning immediately. All marital accounts are frozen pending final settlement. And I'm ordering full financial discovery. Every account, every investment, every asset Mr. Anderson has any interest in must be disclosed within 30 days. Michael's face went white. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm awarding Mrs. Anderson her attorney's fees for this hearing. When one spouse attempts to manipulate proceedings through deception and financial hiding, the court has discretion to ensure the other spouse can afford adequate representation. Mr. Anderson, you'll pay Mrs. Chun's firm $12,000 within 10 days. The gavel came down. 6 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Michael agreed to settle rather than go to trial, recognizing that the evidence would only get worse for him if we proceeded. Final terms: I received 68% of marital assets, the house, 7 years of spousal support, and half his retirement accounts. Total value: approximately $890,000 plus the house worth $450,000. Michael received the remainder of assets and the knowledge that fighting would have resulted in even worse terms. Rachel Morrison had moved to Portland, according to mutual acquaintances. She'd found work at a smaller tech company, taken a significant pay cut, lost her senior title. Her divorce from Marcus was apparently contentious, with him pursuing claims based on the affair and her professional misconduct. Michael was living with his brother, working as a contract software developer for a fraction of his previous salary. None of the major tech companies would hire him after word spread about his termination from Morrison Technology. The Seattle tech community was smaller than people realized. I kept teaching, expanded my consulting practice, and started writing a book about strategic grant writing. Margaret Morrison had indeed reached out about corporate giving opportunities, and I'd accepted a part-time position developing Morrison Technology's nonprofit partnership program. The work was challenging, well-compensated, and perfectly suited to my skills. Skills that Michael had called simple. Skills that had actually been quite sophisticated. He just never bothered to understand them. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. Subject line: I owe you an apology. Hannah, this is Rachel. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I'm the last person who has any right to contact you. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not sorry we got caught. That's just facing consequences we deserved. Sorry for what I said about you. What Michael and I both said, calling you simple, trusting, easy to manage. We were so wrong. You were never simple. You were strategic in ways we didn't recognize until it was too late. I lost my career, my marriage, my reputation. Marcus won't let me see our kids unsupervised. My parents barely speak to me. And I can't even be angry about it because I brought all of this on myself. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what we did, how wrong we were, and how badly we underestimated you. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've found happiness. You deserve it more than I do. Rachel, I read the email 3 times, then deleted it without responding. She wanted forgiveness or understanding or acknowledgement that she'd learned something from this experience. But I didn't owe her anything. Not my time, not my emotional labor, not my absolution. Michael never reached out. Not to apologize, not to explain, not even to express anger at how things had ended. He paid his spousal support on time each month, deposited automatically from his account to mine. The only contact we maintained. That was fine. We'd said everything that needed saying. 1 year after I found that voice recording, I sat in my home office, the house I'd kept, redecorated, made entirely my own, working on my book manuscript. The chapter 1 was writing focused on strategic documentation, on keeping detailed records of all work, all communications, all project developments. Grant writers must be meticulous documenters, I wrote. You never know when you'll need to demonstrate exactly what you did when you did it and why your approach was justified. Documentation protects you, establishes your credibility, and provides evidence of your strategic thinking. The principles applied to more than grant writing. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria Chen. Lunch next week? I have a client situation that could use your nonprofit expertise. Absolutely. Tuesday work for you? Perfect. See you then. I returned to my manuscript, to the work that Michael had called simple, that he'd dismissed as helping people with paperwork. Work that had taught me to document everything, to think systematically, to build airtight cases for why my approach deserved funding. Work that had prepared me perfectly for the moment I needed to build a case for my own future. Outside my window, Seattle spring was arriving. Cherry blossoms in the neighborhood, longer daylight hours, the promise of warmth after the long gray winter. I'd planted a garden in the backyard. Something I'd always wanted, but never had time for when I was managing Michael's schedule and hosting his networking events. Tomatoes, basil, lettuce, snap peas. Simple pleasures. Or maybe not simple at all. Maybe growing things required its own kind of strategic thinking, its own form of sophisticated planning and execution. My doorbell rang. A delivery, a package I'd ordered containing research books from my manuscript. I signed for it, thanked the driver, carried the box inside. The books were about successful nonprofit leadership strategies, case studies of organizations that had achieved remarkable results through careful planning and execution. Complex work, sophisticated work, strategic work. The kind of work I'd been doing all along. Michael had just never bothered to notice. And by the time he'd finally realized what he'd underestimated, it had been far too late. I opened the first book, began taking notes for chapter 7, and smiled.